one of the preeminent Marvel Cinematic Universe power scalers, is going to be joining me on today's stream. The Chadwick is here.
Yo, how's it going, guys?
So we're going to be talking about this spicy statement that Marvel released. But how are you doing, Chad?
I'm good. How are you? How are you guys in chat? Good to be invited back on.
Yeah, chat seems to be vibing. Everyone seems to be in a good mood today. We're all having a great time. So let's just hop right into this because this is some spicy stuff that I've been wanting to talk about for a minute here. And here it is. We have it. Marvel Studios tweeted this out after 24 hours of the Thor trailer or teaser, I guess, being released. And it's a pretty beefy statement from Marvel. They're out here saying just straight up. Wait, hold on. I don't even have my cam and stuff up. Oh, here we are. Okay, now you can see me. Beefy statement saying that Thor is the world's strongest Avenger. Now, you might just think this is some marketing, which of course it is. But on the other hand, it's also an official statement. So, with that being said, Chad, what are your thoughts on this first? And second, how do you think this statement could possibly affect the current Marvel Cinematic Universe power scaling, even before the film is even released?
Well, my initial thoughts are, anyone who has the title of strongest Avenger and he isn't a 8 foot tall, muscle-bound green dude, kind of gets me a bit salty. But
Right.
I think if anyone deserves it in the MCU, it's probably Thor. He's gone for the most. And I think, he definitely has some of the cooler powers out of the Avengers as well. So I think he deserves it the most. And I think if we take a look at the trailer, there's a shot where him and Korg are like perched up on like a mountain, and they're overlooking like the skeleton of a giant kind of like monster. Now that is taken shot for shot from the comics.
Yeah.
Where at the start of the Gore the God Butcher arc, where Gore starts killing everyone and Thor finds that god. And he says that that god used to wrestle black holes for fun. So if we have any statement like that,
we're gonna get a massive upgrade, right?
Yeah.
How do you think this statement? I mean, I think we, as a collective, the Marvel power scaling community, there's going to be some contention over this statement. How do you feel about it in general? Do you think it's something that we should consider? And do you think like it should be considered just a blanket statement for the MCU moving forward?
Okay, so I think that after Multiverse of Madness, you could probably not consider Wanda an Avenger. I feel like she's gonna go down a darker route, personally. And there's a statement from I think Sam Raimi where he says, "Wanda's more powerful, but Strange is more knowledgeable on the mystic arts."
Right.
And I think we all know anyway that Strange isn't really a powerhouse in like the traditional sense. Like again, he's a more knowledgeable person and knows these techniques that can counter raw power, as you see in Infinity War.
Right.
So in that regard, Thor probably will be the strongest Avenger. And probably until Captain Marvel 2. It wouldn't at all surprise me.
So
go on.
When we're talking about strength in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, currently, like, who's considered the strongest? Because we have to take into account, like, two different sort of designations for like the top tier characters in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and something that I think is important to note is that strength isn't necessarily the same thing as power. While someone like Scarlet Witch isn't going to be very physically strong, how much is she deadlifting? You know what I mean? Not much, probably.
Yeah.
But with her magic, of course, she's able to contend with people like Thanos and overpower him using her magic. And I would say, that's her showing off her power and not necessarily her strength. So, with that being taken into consideration, we have another character who's considered like the strongest, or who was considered the strongest and has the best feats just blatantly, which is Captain Marvel. So, do you think this statement would sort of retroactively trump the many, many statements we have of Captain Marvel, who's stated, I believe, to just be the most powerful in multiple instances? It's sort of a similar situation between her and Thor as Gilgamesh and Icarus. So do you think that this statement should just be, okay, Thor is the physically strongest, but considering binary mode, which would, of course, enhance and amplify her strength, or her overall power, would she be still the most powerful, or should this sort of wipe that away?
No, I don't think that it would supersede her statements, because in the Sacred Timeline, we still haven't seen her go binary mode yet. And for those who don't know, and this isn't just like headcanon either, but in the comics, binary mode is when like her face goes red and her hair's basically on fire. And that isn't just a comic thing; it happens in the MCU as well. That happens in 2 episodes of What If. It happens in the Ultron one, when Captain Marvel pulls up and attacks him on Xandar, and like starts driving him into the core. And it happens in the Thor one as well, the Party Thor episode, where she like after she loses to him initially, she comes out of nowhere and like grabs him out of the air, and you can see on her face like her face is like bright red, and then she powers down, and her and Thor are about to clash. Now we haven't seen that from her in the Sacred Timeline yet, which is kind of crazy considering that she basically shot on Thanos without it, and without it she was able to survive a hit from the Power Stone. So yeah, there wouldn't be any contradictions, I don't think, in way of feats-wise, of Captain Marvel being the strongest.
Okay, and kind of piggybacking off of this, I mean, who do we even consider to like be Avengers currently? Like, the Avengers have done nothing since Endgame, when they fought Thanos together. They've been separated. Spider-Man has not been involved with them. Doctor Strange has not been involved with any sort of team. Captain Marvel's off-world. Thor is going to be with the Guardians of the Galaxy. Like, who's an Avenger? You know what I mean? Like, is there an Avengers team currently? Like, I don't know that there is.
Yeah, that's one of the more important things. I guess maybe if you could use the shit at the end of Shang-Chi, where it's him, Wong, and Katie talking to, I think it's Bruce and Carol.
Right.
So if you go off that, maybe it's Captain Marvel and Hulk at the very least.
Yeah.
But like you said, again, Captain Marvel is off-world. So I think it's probably just Hulk at the moment on Earth.
Yeah.
Who is an official Avenger, like who has the membership and all that, not just someone who was at the battle of Endgame, the final battle, and was there when Captain America shouted "Avengers Assemble."
Yeah, and what's the leadership like in the Avengers, if there is an Avengers team? But I mean, based on the statement, they're saying there is, right? So,
Yeah,
what's
yeah.
the leadership look like? Is it Bruce Banner? Is it Carol? We're sort of unaware. We're kind of in the dark right now, and there's been a lot of content that's come out since Endgame. We've had Falcon and Winter Soldier. Not really any mention of Avengers in that. We have a new Captain America. We saw War Machine in that series. WandaVision, pretty much nothing. Loki, nothing, but didn't expect there to be much. Um, as I said, in Hawkeye, not really anything going on Avengers wise. So it's kind of hard to say what's really going on with the team. And I don't think we're going to get another Avengers movie anytime soon. Chat, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't they say they're like Endgame was like the last one? So I'm not sure. It's an interesting topic to think about just because the Avengers have been such a driving force behind the Marvel Cinematic Universe for the first three phases. Obviously, the first phase was bringing them together, and then they sort of had their final hurrah in Endgame. Are we over and done with, or what? Because it seems like they've been setting up these new heroes to sort of join, like Kate Bishop and Shang-Chi, and on the other hand, people are leaving the Avengers, like Spider-Man. So it's really in flux.
Yeah, yeah. Someone pointed out in chat that in the Eternals, it's implied that the Avengers don't have a leader. And
Yeah,
I
that's
think
a
that's
good
fair
point.
to say
Yeah.
because in Age of Ultron, when the Avengers come back from attacking Hydra at the start, Maria Hill calls Tony boss, and he's like, "Oh no, Captain America's the boss. I'll just make the stuff and make everyone look cool."
Right.
And at the end of Age of Ultron, Captain America's the one to obviously assemble the the new roster.
Right.
Uh, and obviously, if he's gone, like you said, there is a pretty big space to fill. Uh, but without an official leader who rallies the remnants of the Avengers.
Right. And that's interesting to think of in conjunction with this statement because we're talking about Thor being the strongest Avenger. And without knowing who the Avengers are right now, it's kind of hard to determine what that even means. You know what I'm saying? So I,
Yeah,
I, I feel like a lot of people were really, really getting super excited about this statement, and I love it. I think it's interesting. I love Thor. I'd love him to be much, much higher on the tier list. He's had a rough go of things, so I think to see him sort of take like the next step to becoming something, I guess, more Odin like, not necessarily in his role, but like the mysticism and myth that surrounds him. You know what I'm saying?
yeah. I think like if anyone, any heroes or in the event in the MCU, also at least the Sacred Timeline, who I could think of to be throwing people around in space and like cracking planets and things, it would be Thor.
Yeah.
Even over Captain Marvel, that's more so coming from a comic goon standpoint. But at the same time, I think
Nothing wrong with being
he
a
he,
comic
he
book goon.
yeah he. But I just feel like he just fits that role as well better.
Yeah. So, kind of going off of that notion of cracking planets and throwing around moons or whatever, these random statements that we've gotten from various actors and actresses throughout the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think we're kind of moving in that direction. Did you watch? I know we've talked about this, but did you check out the stream last week where I was talking about Khonshu and all that?
I did. I did.
Do you think that in Love and Thunder we're going to get that kind of tier of power within the movies, I guess, that would be like a pretty blatant step up in overall power. I know there are statements, like I mentioned earlier, about these characters being far more powerful than what we currently sort of agree that they are at. Um, do you think we're going to kind of start getting into the realm of, yeah, the Avengers are going to start bullying the DC Extended Universe Justice League? The gods are going to be literal, godlike beings. Do you think that's the way they're heading based on, this statement, what we're seeing in the trailer, what you had mentioned about the comics? We're going to have a character called Gore the God Butcher that's going to be going around butchering gods, and we've already seen his handiwork in the teaser. Is this what we should expect from the higher tiers of the Marvel Cinematic Universe?
Yeah, I think so. I I don't see how you could not at this point, to be honest, because you're gonna, we're getting Fantastic Four in about 3 years. At that point, you have people like Doom, Surfer, and Galactus at the least. That's who I think of when I think of the
Yeah,
Fantastic Four.
yeah, that's true.
Galactus's like main alias is the Devourer of Worlds.
For sure.
Um, and Silver Surfer can combat him to a degree. Thor can fight Silver Surfer, all this stuff, and it just ends up coming full circle. And like you said, Gore, Taika, is apparently a big Thor head.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's kind of backed up in that, like we said earlier, that shot for shot recreation of the comic. If it is like the arc is like as close as you can get, then Thor and Gore will be breaking planets, or Thor, Jane and Gore, sorry, will be breaking planets.
I mean, I would love to see some Dragon Ball Z-esque type stuff where, maybe Jane swings a hammer and launches Gore through a planet that just blows up. Of course, an empty planet without any, people on it, but still, that sort of, spectacle, I think, is the next step for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We've gotten to the point where they're making statements in the films that Thor is tanking the entire force of a star, which is a crazy statement, but when you take a closer look at it, not really all that impressive compared to what you would think just hearing that, right? But now we're getting to the point where Khonshu's moving the entire Milky Way possibly, and Thor and Jane are going to start really cracking heads. So if these gods are at that level of power, the Ennead at least, and Bast is rumored to be in it, I think if that ends up being the case, then all bets are off. We're going to be getting solar system Thor and shit like that, which will be interesting if Thor ever does come back to Earth and interacts with the Avengers again, or has a fight with Hulk or somebody, because that was always the barometer the barometer for Thor and Hulk were each other. So now that Thor is off battling god killers and busting planets, at least we hope that's what he's going to be doing, just for the pure spectacle of things. Where does that leave your boy? What's going on?
My boy? Oh
Yeah.
my god.
Where's he at?
I think because I think Foggy said She-Hulk will be a kind of passing of the torch kind of show.
Do you think Hulk's going to be, he's retired, he's done?
I think he needs to go into a retirement kind of role.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he needs to be the first villain for whatever next team up movie they do. Because right now he's in it's a bit weird. You can consider it the Intelligent Hulk persona or the Professor Hulk persona from the comics. But at one point, basically, it's around Incredible Hulk Volume 2, Issue 299. Nightmare starts to influence Hulk subconsciously, and eventually Bruce Banner's like, I'm sick to death of being related with this destruction and stuff from the Hulk. So he just basically mentally commits suicide and just leaves Hulk on himself with no influence, no subconscious influence. So he's just this being of pure rage and destruction. And it takes Doctor Strange banishing him to the crossroads of dimensions, which is just like this infinite space full of like infinite doorways to different universes. So I think you can do something like that with Hulk, or like someone said in the chat, World War Hulk ? You most definitely could call it that. I don't think Universal would probably allow that though. But you could have it like that where he's just going through a gauntlet of heroes, and eventually they just. I don't think they would kill him. But I think they would just like Doctor Strange would just be a firing basically, and that's how you would just put Hulk's story to a close, which I would be fine with personally. At least he gets feats as he goes out.
How do you feel about the interim? Like, if that's where we want to get to with Hulk, and who knows what's going to happen with the character, I think he's sort of been left on the wayside to highlight other characters, unfortunately, which I don't think necessarily needs to be the case, especially in Endgame. You know, they said that his big moment was the snap, and he was like the only one that could do that, but it was an important moment, but not necessarily as, I guess, memorable or as triumphant as just completely bullying Thanos like Carol did or like Wanda did. Everybody remembers those moments, but the Hulk sort of gets forgotten a little bit. So in the interim, in this passing of the torch, how do you see She-Hulk shaking out? How do you see the possibility of Red Hulk shaking out? Do you think that She-Hulk might get a little bit more of that shine that maybe Hulk, Bruce Banner, didn't receive just because we don't really have to worry about Universal and yada, yada, yada?
Well, to address the Endgame stuff, I won't go into it in depth because I could end up going on. I could do like a video essay on that kind of stuff.
You can say whatever you want.
But him doing the snap by itself is fine. And Crisis brought this up to me before, but it's like in Avengers, Tony Stark is like, well, what if the Hulk saved you, and what about if that is for a reason? And then obviously the gamma radiation is the reason he's able to survive and pull off the snap. But that gets overshadowed by Tony Stark. Even if you forget the fights in the middle, that gets overshadowed by Tony Stark, who is a much more prominent and iconic character in the MCU, later doing the snap and dying from it. So that's far more of a bigger moment, really.
Yeah.
And in the grand scheme of things, he's ending that fight. You know what I mean? That beat that 21 movie long fight.
Yeah, Iron Man had the last say.
Yeah.
Thor sort of really kind of left on the side as well. But of course, there's room for growth. We have another Thor movie coming up. But with Hulk, it's kind of hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel. But do you think that She-Hulk could be at that sort of level?
In terms of strength, yes. Yeah, I think there are some specific comics where She-Hulk has like kind of had a very volatile reaction to certain things, and she has like approached that level where it is only the Hulk who can calm her down, and that's by force, like physical force. And then recently in the one of the She-Hulk solo runs, you have her react basically all the stress from the reaction of her dying to Thanos and seeing Bruce Banner die in Civil War 2. She like kind of unlocks this Grey Hulk persona, and she becomes stronger, and she fights Jane Foster Thor in one of the Mighty Thor issues. So we could get that. That could be the new rivalry, which I wouldn't be contentious about at all. I think that would be pretty cool to see.
Yeah, since Thor's going through this whole journey of self-discovery, saying that he's going to retire from being a superhero, Hulk basically being forced on the sidelines due to injury, he's on the DL. And now you have She-Hulk coming up, and you have Jane Foster Thor coming up. I think what you said is right for the picking. That's the potential new, heavy-hitting dynamic duo within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And then, of course, you have to consider Carol in that as well. So you would sort of have, I guess that would be the new Trinity, at least in terms of, power levels.
Yeah, I can see that. And as well, like you brought up Red Hulk. Someone in the chat said the actor for Red Hulk died recently. Yeah, he did. William Hurt passed away.
Yep.
But there are 2 Red Hulks in the comics. There's General Thunderbolt Ross, and there's Robert Maverick. So you could definitely work that in there somehow if they were to wanting to introduce a variant of the character.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of characters, the Hulk mythos definitely doesn't have as many to pick from as someone like Thor or even Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
Really, if you take into account her cosmic adventures and shit, she starts meeting the Shi'ar, which is Gladiator and all that, and then you have the original Captain Marvel, and you obviously have Silver Surfer and that. But yeah, I think at the very least we'll get Scar in She-Hulk, and Abomination's obviously meant to be coming back as well. So
yeah, that's very true. Let me ask you this before you get out of here. Do you think that we are going to reach a breaking point in the Marvel Cinematic Universe for the power levels, and there will end up being a reversion back to lower power levels? Or do you think that the power cliff for the previous phases, let's say phase 3 prior, is just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger? You had mentioned the Fantastic Four coming in. You had we also have, obviously, the X-Men are going to be introduced at some point. We have all these characters, all these deities, gods, etc., etc. Doctor Strange in the multiverse, Scarlet Witch, breaking the multiverse. Obviously we've already had Dormammu, who's a multiversal level being. Do you think we're just going to keep going up indefinitely until the end, or do you think eventually they're going to hit a breaking point where they need to sort of come back down to reality? Because in the comic books, when they need to go big, they do, but they can rein it back for the most part, and you could do more subdued stories without having to explain everything. Do you think we're going to reach a point of no return in the MCU in terms of power levels?
I think I actually responded to a comment on YouTube about the Thor versus Hulk event that's about to go on in the comics, and someone was like, "Oh, it's crazy. Hulk should never be on, or Hulk and Thor should never be Skyfather level beings like Odin, Zeus, and all that."
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, in a landscape where there are ever increasing threats, not in terms of just danger, but in a literal power, and you have to have these lower beings combat these threats, and obviously you want to give the ones with the big, the characters with the biggest fan bases moments to shine. You have to have them scale up at some point. So power progression is a thing in comics, which a lot of people don't want to believe. Now, cinema is a landscape where evolution is a thing. It's why we have sequels, and character development. So I think it will just keep going up. Well, like you said, they'll, maybe one in the next in a future Avengers movie or team up movie, Sam Wilson will like throw Mjolnir so hard it'll make, I don't know, it'll hurt Silver Surfer. Let's say that's a really stupid hypothetical, but whatever. Let's go with that. And then in the next one, he himself physically is struggling with like let me think of like Red Skull's daughter Sin. That's a Captain America villain.
Yeah, just as an example.
Yeah, like you said, you have to rein it back for some characters, but that's just because that is their environment.
Exactly.
Personally, like Hulk isn't going to be smashing planets on the regular by just walking. That is saved for very special Hulk-centric arcs. But when he crosses over, like in this new event, he most definitely will be showcasing some good feats. So I think, again, when they're put in that environment and they have to react to certain characters in a physical way, they will be reined up. But like you said, they will be dragged back down a bit. Like Moon Knight most definitely isn't going to be making someone like Galactus bleed or anything. But yeah,
we can only hope.
Yeah, we can only hope. I mean, he did contain Khonshu's power when he was moving the moon, so
That's true. All right, Chad. Thanks for hopping on, talking power scaling for about 30 minutes. Appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Where can everyone find you? What's going on? What's up with the YouTube channel? You got anything coming out?
Yeah, I want to do, because Donny Cates' Hulk Runner just finished its first arc with a new reveal of a new Hulk persona, so I want to do like a Bruce Banner Hulk like version tier list based on which versions are the strongest. But you can get me over on the TheChadChamp YouTube channel. If you just search that up and then just put like Hulk or Resident Evil.
TheChadChamp. For all the people watching this, the VOD of this, which is on the second channel, chat, you guys should go subscribe to the second channel so you can see the clips of the stream that are going to be re-uploaded there. For all the people watching the VOD, I will link Chad's channel in the description. But thank you, Chad, for coming on. We appreciate your expertise, as always, on the Marvel Comics as well as the Marvel Cinematic Universe power scaling.
No problem. Thanks for having me again, and see you later, guys.
Take it easy. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Chad himself. Let me know in the chat, by the way. Sorry, chat, I haven't been reading all your messages because, me and Chad were kind of in a thing there talking about MCU power scaling. But let me know in the chat if you guys enjoyed Chad's feature on here. He's a guy that I like having on a lot. He knows a ton about Marvel Comics as well as the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So if you guys like segments like that, obviously we can have more people on more regularly, different guests, little features, little spots here and there. I think doing stuff like that really breaks up the monotony and makes things more enjoyable. So we talked about the Marvel Cinematic Universe power scaling.